Believe it or not, steroids are a professional wrestler's bread and butter. And because professional wrestling is an act more than the sport, you have to look the part to play the part. And so, in today's video, we're going to be looking at WWE wrestlers who lost their trademark physique when they went off steroids. Kurt Angle. To start, we're going to be naming one of the biggest stars the WWE has ever produced. Known primarily for his heavy physicality with his strength and explosive power, he was someone who put on a show every time he was in the ring. And while there was no doubt about his fighting credentials, he was an Olympic gold medalist after all, the one thing that tainted his legacy was extensive steroid use, for he was reprimanded by the WWE, among many others. And Angle admitted to the use of steroids when he broke his neck during a WWE appearance. Since then, however, he has said that he's clean, and has even challenged that if he could be tested right now, he'd come up clean. However, the fact of the matter is that ever since he's come off the juice, he's aged even faster, his body completely deflating due to the absence of the performance-enhancing drugs. In recent WWE appearances, it was evident that Angle had lost most of his musculature and tonality that he was once famous for, with fans especially noting that his legs have gotten smaller and weaker, and so has his competitive stamina. The Ultimate Warrior. If you're a WWE fan and you think about steroids, the first person that comes to mind is the Ultimate Warrior. Infamous in the wrestling community as perhaps one of the most ripped dudes in the promotion, especially in the 80s and 90s where hyper-masculinity was the standard. If you weren't jacked and ripped to shreds, were you even an athlete? And to look like an athlete, the Ultimate Warrior, someone looks like they might just burst from the amount of testosterone in them. People such as himself took a hefty amount of steroids, and after his runs in the WWE and WCW, it seems that he had to come off the juice, and that deviation was apparent when he practically lost all of the attributes that he had, one that made him a physical monster. And not only did he lose his appeal when he stopped taking the juice, after an excessive overuse of steroids, some people speculate the reason why he passed away so early was because of the inability of his body to cope. That took a rather depressing turn, didn't it? Hulk Hogan. What WWE list could be complete without the legendary name of Hulk Hogan gracing it? Known as perhaps the most famous professional wrestler on the planet, this man was weighing in at around 303 pounds, jacked as hell and standing tall at an astounding 6 feet 5 inches. Known as a gifted athlete, notorious for his 24-inch pythons, which refers to his gigantic bulging biceps, he was an imposing figure. But it was a known fact for everyone who followed the sport that he didn't get his body from taking a protein-heavy diet, or eating something like a dozen eggs every day. Nope, Hogan admitted himself that he was on the juice, and heavily. This was when Vince McMahon was charged with the felony of providing illegal substances and steroids to his stars in the promotion. And ever since Hogan went off the roids, he's not only deflated, but in recent pictures it seems that he almost kind of melted off all the muscle that he had, and this speaks volumes for the amount of juice they were on. This whole generation of wrestlers were on the juice, so to say. Scott Steiner, another one of the OGs in WWE and WCW, who made their mark in the wrestling community during the 90s and 2000s, it seemed that Steiner was always on the juice. And while it can be argued that his fiery and hot-headed persona was a part of the character he played as a professional wrestler, fans had deduced that he was almost always suffering from what's called the roid rage. Always extremely loud, obnoxiously arrogant, and angry. We're surprised he's not on some Moexapril. Jeez. But even if he was the definition of being jacked to the bone, having an insane amount of muscle, he, like his peers, relied too heavily on steroids for that. Once the Big Papa Pump stopped taking the juice, he practically deflated like a balloon, especially since he stopped his usage almost immediately, after a prolonged use that spanned decades. And while he still looks big and athletic, it seems that he has lost most of the muscle definition that he once had when he used to compete. He mostly used androstenedione, which is a testosterone enhancer. Chris Masters. Sporting a hefty physique over his run during the 2005 to 2007 period, he eventually got named the Masterpiece because of not just the charisma he had, but how glorious his body looked on stage. And whether you like it or not, this is a sport where vanity does matter. However, as fate would have it, Chris Masters' career would not last long, and what would be the cause of his downfall was just an insane amount of wellness and health policy violations, which kind of just sidetracked him from becoming a key player in the world of wrestling. wrestling. And since his release from the WWE in 2011, Masters just sort of dissolved into irrelevance. It's a cutthroat business and an even tougher sport, no doubt about that. However, the good news is that Chris Masters, who now goes by the name of Chris Adonis, is currently associated with the indie wrestling scene, performing on Impact Wrestling. And if you take a look at his current pictures as opposed to the ones taken 10 to 13 years ago, the concerning amount of juice he was on is clear. He's still in shape, but not entirely that cut or built. Ahmed Johnson. This might look like a new, unfamiliar name to you, and that's because Johnson never made it to the ultimate stardom of being a professional wrestler. But when we talk about steroid use in the WWE, his name is one that has to come on this list. And while he failed to make it big in the WWE, probably because of his lack of charisma, it seems that the only reason he lasted as long as he did was because of his rather freakish physique. And while he spent the most of his WWE sprint wound up in agonizing injuries, it seems that Ahmed also lost a fair bit of fans when they found out the amount of juice he was on. Once his career started to slowly fail, his motivation to do better and perform better died as well. And as a direct consequence of that, we saw how Ahmed Johnson truly looked. Getting off the steroids and not working out as much, nearly all of Johnson's stealth just turned into a jiggly mass of fat. He wasn't even as buff as he used to be. And while he may have taken prescribed steroids from the doctor at the time that he was in the WWE, it still doesn't make the transformation any less shocking. Rick Rude. One of the most uniquely enigmatic wrestlers in the 80s, Rick the Ravishing Rude was a sight to behold, especially with his ripped physique and wacky antics that he used to pull on the audience. He was the typical heel character that the WWE always wanted and looked for, a typical antagonist villain that everyone would love to hate. And after his superbly successful run in the WWE, he went into WCW and ECW. However, as fate would have it, his career could only be so long. Rick Rude passed away suddenly in 1999, aged merely 40, due to cardiac arrest. And while there may have been underlying issues like stress and a history of heart disease, it seems that the steroid abuse played a major part in it. Before his death, Rude himself admitted to using steroids because it made him look good. And while that might have been terrific for his WWE career, his cardiovascular system, not so much. Lex Luger. Cherry-picked by the WWE as a replacement for Hulk Hogan, he did well to enjoy, if not a similar level of success and fame. He did enjoy a good amount of it, and while he had the perfect looks to be a WWE superstar, especially with his blonde hair, the buffed-up physique, and the charming smile, most of appeal, which came from his athletic-looking and muscular physique, was a result of heavy steroid use, one that he admitted to at a point in his career. And not only had he been addicted to steroids to, quote, keep himself in shape, he was also addicted to the wrong kind of drugs, ones that harm the body greatly. These mainly included a colorful cocktail of prescribed drugs, narcotics, recreational drugs, and alcohol. Safe to say, he was the classic archetypal guy battling the sex, drugs, and alcohol phase. In his own words, he says, "If you snort it, spray it, shoot it, inject it, I did it, buddy. Or I was around it. That was my life. Alcohol? I abused it all. I took a lot of pills. I was a pill popper." And tells you need to know about the total package. And after being off all of this junk, he merely looks like a shadow of his former self, having aged perhaps 15 times faster than the average person. And that's all for today, folks. Make sure you support our channel and check out the next video. Until then, ciao.